with a sheep in the mid to late 80s. So when I was growing up, the temperature in Rothschild was an average, the daily maximum was 21.8. By 2050, it's 25 degrees, which, as we've all heard a lot in recent times, these degrees don't sound like much, but it actually makes a huge difference. And it's going to be in those extreme days that big shift is going to happen. So we are looking at a very new environment. But I hope, I'll talk in a minute about climate change is often just thought of as this incredibly depressing topic, and often you kind of want to not think about it. But there's actually some really good opportunities within the climate change space, and we're not doing ourselves any favours if we don't kind of tackle it head on. So it's going to cost us longer, or it cost us more down the line. So the group I'm with is Farmers for Climate Action. This is if this has connected, the ad that we put together when we were first formed, which was May 2017. So we're a relatively new organisation. Let's see if it works, shall we? And, here we go. So yeah, we came out of a meeting of the Blue Mountains of a group of farmers who were just really concerned about government inaction. So they wanted tools for what they were going to be doing on farm and greater government support for provision of that, and also to know that the government was actually doing something to change our climate trajectory. So our group was born out of that.
We've been farming out here for a long time.
That connection to our land is in our blood.
So when things change around here,
We notice it.
We're all seeing the changing weather.
We're already dealing with the risks.
and while we have generations of experience as to how to manage extremes,
this is different.
Climate change isn't just a problem for our kids.
we're a practical nation and we're smart enough to get on with the solutions.
Business as usual is no longer an option.
We want future generations to have the choice to farm like we did.
We just have to look up, speak up, and politicians need to keep up.
Standing up for rural Australia means standing up for action on climate change. Our future's in our hands.
I love watching that actually, to see some of those farmers that were there, well, most of those farmers that were there right at the start are still with us. So Jim McDonald was one of the older guys there. I'm putting forward him to media all the time. He's so generous with his time. It's just fantastic. So we've basically got a group of, we're a movement of 5,000 farmers. We have probably 100 or so farmers that I'm talking to all the time. So meeting with government, writing letters to politicians, talking to media, and so on. We're non-partisan. We're talking right across the political spectrum, which sets us apart from other environmental groups. We really believe that if we can organise farmers, graziers and agriculturists to lead climate solutions on farm and advocate together, we can influence the sector and government to implement climate policies that reduce pollution and benefit rural communities. So, and we are seeing some progress. So, as you know, as you all know, a lot of these the impacts for agriculture are varied. It's such a complex space. So you're looking at pest, weed and disease risk changes, changes to the availability and cost of inputs, the impact of elevated CO2 levels on crop pasture growth and quality. You've got the extreme events, so likely increase in variability between years, risk of fire weather, as we're seeing this week. Increased risk cyclones may become more intense, heat stress on livestock and people, and we've got increased frost risks in some regions. So there's so many parts to this. It's a huge puzzle to be working with. But I'm actually really positive working in this space. I think the more work I do here, the more hope I have for the future. And there's a number of areas where I feel like we're seeing some real progress, and I thought I'd just go through some of those now. So one is we actually have the solutions. Like, one of the main things that we can do now, or the government can do, is to turn around our emissions trajectory, and we've actually got So we've got the renewable energy technologies. We could be transitioning very, very quickly to 100% renewables if we get the political will. And we've got so many solutions that farmers can be doing on farm. So the farmers that are behind us are keen to be part of the climate solution, and they see that the land that they have as a key part of Australia's answer to this. So farmers manage 50 to 60% of Australia's land mass. So you guys have got such an important role in this. We work closely with MinterEllison. We've been holding some major events for farmers across the East Coast, and we're starting to do some on the West Coast of managing climate risk in agriculture. So we bring together the experts in what's happening in climate change. MinterEllison is one of Australia's leading law firms, and they have a whole division on managing climate risk. They're being called out all the time to talk to local government, businesses and so on about what climate change means for them and what's going to happen if they're not on the front foot. So there's the physical risks of climate change, there's the transitional, so if you're not keeping up with the transition, and there's the liability, which is a really interesting one. So companies are really worried that they're going to be held responsible if they don't take action, and we've seen this is happening with governments as well. So
does that include local government?
Yeah, so they're meeting with local government too, and there are concerns with if local government isn't doing enough, there could be action further down the line. And it's such a complex legal space that you'd need someone from MinterEllison to explain exactly how that works. Right. But I can point you to, we've been filming some of the presentations that we've had in recent times, and we've actually got one from Charlotte Turner up on our website, which I can send to you if you're interested. So. And you're seeing this, even the Reserve Bank is saying climate change is a major risk for our financial stability. So a lot of people who are choosing to kind of position climate as a greenie hysteria are kind of ignoring the fact that there's bodies like the Reserve Bank Australia that are putting this forward. This is not, this is not a greenie dream. This is the reality of what we're facing. And Bank of England, I just grabbed this off their website this week, but they've got a whole section on managing climate risk and what they're doing, and also what it means for the economy. So it's a major concern. So the thing that I find positive about that is that this action's happening even without governments, because in the end there are these processes within the legal framework and within business that's going to mean that there's going to be changes. So the ag industry isn't perfect, but it's really evolving. I started working at an ag paper in the early 2000s, and then I worked at Country News, Stock and Land, and then at Curry Communications with ag clients. I had a little time out between 2010 and 2014 to 16, and even in that time, just the conversation is changing dramatically in agriculture. And I know we always want the kind of the industry to be moving forward more quickly, or I do, but the shift in the language even that's being used is massive. So we now have the Red Meat 2030 plan. So the red meat industry is going to be carbon neutral by 2030. That's the goal. They're reporting on that, and there is progress. Progress is being made. We've got the beef sustainability framework, so it's the dairy sustainability framework. So they're setting goals for greenhouse emissions with these sectors. The beef sustainability framework kind of sits alongside the Red Meat 2030. And now we've even got the grain sustainability framework, which doesn't exist yet, but it's on its way. So the various sectors are kind of looking at what they're doing. And
how's accountability managed to this work?
It's interesting, isn't it?
Well, is it just...
Yeah. So...
It's like it's a lot of... I just think, unless this is really somehow tough action being... It's tough and soft action.
Yeah.
But unless there's something to force this, there's no one in my district who owns a big farm that's changing anything.
Yeah,
that they
yeah.
do.
So,
The sheep price is excellent.
yep, 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 yep. What I would,
You know, so I'm just sort of,
yeah,
that's what
yeah,
I'm just saying. I mean, that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
Work, I suppose.
Can I just give an example of what indicators that are, I guess, telling us of change, albeit they're the forefront of the sectors, and that is certainly you're seeing supply chains starting to realign themselves in the big corporates where they've got the CSR, corporate social responsibility obligation that's in their annual business plan and it's public and so on. And a lot of the green groups and activist groups hold them accountable on a daily basis, coupled with the your comments about the fiduciary responsibilities of directors of organisations. That's starting to bring a confluence of concern, if you like, and responsibility in a way that we've not seen before. You're starting to see groups like Indigo Ag in the US doing some phenomenal stuff, and we're going to see that soon in Australia across whole supply chains. So there's really exciting stuff happening that I think will filter down to farms like you're talking about, and we're all surrounded by them, within, I suspect, the next 24, 36 months.
yes.
I might be wrong, but that's what the sort of indicators are pointing towards. And a lot of farms, well, a lot, and what I mean probably something, point something of %. But compared to where it previously was, they're wanting to go carbon neutral because they see there's a market differentiator, because people are actually seeking that sort of provenance information. So I'm an optimist clearly when I say these sorts of things, but there are signs there now that were not there before.
Absolutely.
This is a pretty big issue because there's a huge difference between what we want to do and what we say we're doing to what we actually are doing.
Yeah.
And I was reading a paper the other day by Andrew Campbell reviewing the Landcare movement and the whole kind of NRM space for the last 30 years, and they basically gave it a resounding fail. And they said at the end there was lots of attitude change and a lot of, good things, green shoots here, green shoots there, but the actual material change on the ground was virtually nil.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to change people's minds and their language and the media and the discussion, but it's another thing altogether to
measure that
what's actually
change.
going on the ground. Unless we do that, we're really just kidding ourselves.
As I understand it, oh, sorry, you go.
What Dean's been talking about, that's the sort of drivers that are going to drive change. Yeah, we can...
Oh, the economic argument.
Why doesn't the farmer do this? Why doesn't he do that? He should do that. We should make a law. No. It'll be driven by, if he doesn't change, he'll get a discount for his product. And this is what the industries aren't picking this up for, like lofty environmental goals. They're picking it up because this is what consumers demand, and also this is how agriculture has to move.
The 2030 target exactly for those reasons. They're under huge threat at the moment globally from the red meat sector.
And they're putting out details on it, and I think if the figures turn out to be rubbery, that is I don't think they could risk that. That is a massive risk for the red meat industry.
If we had a value on carbon and farmers had access to it over across the board, like was meant to happen after Paris, that would create huge change.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was at the meeting where they talked about this grain sustainability framework. And they're greenwashing now. Really.
Oh, well, they haven't done anything yet.
Voices in the dark saying it should go further. So at least they got a framework. So it's just a step.
Oh, absolutely. And, I'll go on to a little bit about government in a second, but, one of our farmers that I work closely with, he is so committed to becoming carbon neutral. He's a beef farmer in Gippsland, but he's hired 3 different consultants to tell him how he can get the official recognition for it. And they've all come back. The latest is $70,000 for accreditation to become carbon neutral. So it's just, there's a lot of political red tape that are holding farmers back. So part of what we are trying to do is to change that conversation. So, and I was just going to talk about National Farmers Federation. So we're an associate member of NFF, which means we get to be in on their conversations and continue. We're constantly making sure that climate is a part of those discussions. NFF has changed dramatically in what they've been saying in recent times. I know that we'd like them to go further. I guess they're juggling a lot of different interests, but they're certainly moving in a positive direction.
Who funds them just out of interest? NFF?
Who funds the NFF?
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah, farmers. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Not, interests, other interests? Or?
No, it's farmer. It's a farmer. Yeah. And I was just going to say one of the other things that gives me hope is the amount of research that has continued to be happening in this space in spite of, we've had governments in the mid to late 2000s. I was writing a government magazine on climate, it was really agricultural research, and it was obvious all this climate change research was going on, and it had to be framed in different climate variability. The way it was talked about was all politics, but actually there's scientists out there getting on with the business of climate change research. We need so much more. We also need ways for farmers to access it, which is what we were talking about just before. I was really excited. I was at the Bircham Climate Resilience Conference the other week, and RMIT and another group, there's a few organisations involved with the Climate Change Exchange, where they're about to. It's still being launched. If you go to the website, there's actually no research in it yet, but they're going to try and bring together a database of all the climate change research that's going in across Australia, which is going to be fantastic. The next step will be translating that so that those of us that don't have a degree in science can actually understand it and work with it.
That'll be made available to Parliament House in Canberra.
Yes, well, we can continue to bring that in there. And the other thing that makes me hopeful is our major campaign at Farmers for Climate Action is to see a fully funded and implemented national strategy for climate change and agriculture. So we commissioned Australian Farm Institute to write a report on why we need such a strategy earlier this year. They put together a report which we launched at Parliament House. So basically we're talking about, we need a strategy because we can minimise climate change risks. We've got to be changing our ag systems. We've got to be developing clean energy, changing our practices and, taking advantage of opportunities. So that report made it really clear that the risks are huge if we don't do this. Prior to this, in May 2018, we worked with the Vic government to put a motion to AgMin, which is the Ministers for Agriculture, State and Federal, to progress a national strategy for climate change and agriculture, and that motion was supported. Just recently, the next stage in that has come out, so AgMin met, and now the Vic government's got the go-ahead to develop a national climate change works program. We'd love it to be called a strategy to involve the political side of it as well, but it is a really key part of what needs to happen. So we'll be watching that closely and making sure that that has what farmers need and that it is fully funded and implemented. Because, it's all well and good to say we're going to do this, but we need it, and we need it quite quickly. And I was just going to say, our farmers are talking to ministers and the media all the time about the need for climate change, and we're getting more, the ministers are much more receptive. They're listening much more closely. More successful in some areas than others. We launched this report at Parliament House, made the time so that the Nats could come, and none turned up, and unfortunately that was the headline. But we are meeting with other Nats. Rural Libs are really interested in a national strategy at the moment, which is good to hear. Everyone's interested in things to do with what farmers can do and renewables. It's just the tricky bits about the emissions trajectory that seems to be the more difficult part, and also funding, the other side. No one wants to talk about that's not true. We want to talk about clean energy, but they don't want to talk about the fact that at the moment Australia's emissions trajectory hasn't changed, is still increasing. So those harder conversations about what's going to happen to progress that are much more difficult. So, obviously following the election, the coal is a very sensitive issue. across the political spectrum, and it's hard, I guess it's a hard political space to be brave if you're not on the Greens side of politics right now. So, yeah, so they are trickier conversations that are being had. The other thing that I feel really positive about is that people are really listening, and that is going to flow through to action in time. But we have to kind of repeat things about 1 million times before those who are in the control positions do listen. So we had a big rally outside Parliament House last year with trucks with signs and so on. So BBC, we've spoken to BBC already twice in the last year. I think we've got another inquiry this week. I've got Japanese kind of national broadcaster speaking to one of our farmers today. One of our farmers is on the drum tonight. I was super excited so this is Payte Holding, one of our farmers. He wrote an op-ed that we helped pitch to, it's a Fairfax regional column, so it's got up in the Courier Mail just last night, saying we play a tricky balance between we're trying not to be too oppositional, we're bringing all the politics across, but we did think that the first line is that our politicians are failing us. So he's a firefighter as well as a farmer. He coordinates 2,500 volunteers, and really this year is the first year he doesn't feel confident. He has to feel confident that he's putting them in a safe space, and the fires are so ferocious right now, it makes his job very, very difficult. He talked about some of the things that need to happen, but the main one is for our emissions trajectory to change. And the other thing, finally, that just makes me so excited is that there are amazing, I think that farmers are the best spokespeople on climate change, and we've got so many people that are willing to stand up and talk about it, and we've got so many more that are just getting on with it on farm, and they're doing things anyway. So Pete Mailer, who has had a bit of a go at NFF in the media in the last couple of weeks, but he's a beef farmer and he's got a solar farm business. And he's very, he's working all the time to try and get this political change. So this is Kerry McMartin, a strawberry grower in Queensland. She's installed a recycling machine on her property, so all the plastic that they've got, she's moulding it into poles and different things. So, there's lots of little bits and pieces going on, which I find really inspiring. Neil Wescott's one of our farmers who's a parks councillor, and he is just, untiring in the work that he does on farm and publicly. So more, there's Pete again at our rally. So, right now, we talked to Mark Howden, who's Professor Mark Howden from ANU, who's the IPCC Vice Chair a lot, and he's always talking about this kind of every choice matters. So we're at a moment in human history where every year matters, every half a degree warming matters, every extinction matters, and that means every choice that we make right now counts. So in our paddocks, in our politics, in our day-to-day lives. So it's fantastic to see you all here at the moment, kind of turning out to find out what you can be doing or what can be done on farm. I'm making your choices count right now. So thanks. Hopefully I didn't. You're probably all starving now.
We are. So do you have any, just take 2 questions before we head off to
The divide between farming community and the city consumers is just, to me, widening all the time. Some of the
there are challenges, definitely.
Just shut up, or else.
We have.
As in, we shut up because they just don't want to know about it.
Yeah.
It's cheap. Doesn't matter where it comes from. The ramifications of plastics and packaging.
Yeah.
It just seems to get worse, not better, to me.
There is that. There is also, people trust farmers a lot. So, but there is the problem of this divide. but there's also a lot of people who think farmers are doing an awesome job and they support them. But some of the vocal people that turn out on our Facebook page at times to criticise our farmers who are trying to do the right thing, you know, that is really frustrating. We get comments like, you know, we shouldn't even have, let's get rid of farming altogether, and things like that, where it's really, I'm not sure sometimes where people think the food's coming from.
I think that though it's true, largely, you know, we have an agriculture system that actually is, there's a lot of great farmers in this room, and there's a lot of great farmers out there, but largely they're just as mercenary in their use of the land and their abuse of the land as everything else. So agriculture, I don't think we can say farmers aren't part of the problem.
Oh, absolutely.
We're all in it together.
And, you know,
we're all, you know, influenced by all sorts of things, whether you live in the city or out in the country, and how you make your money.
Everyone's doing different things.
That's a great story around regen ag, because you follow the enlightened self-interest, and those people or perish.
And that's my question, Fiona. Are you seeing any farmer-to-farmer change? Like, there's 5,000 members and you've got 100 active farmers out there speaking about it. But those farmers haven't all necessarily come from the organic space, or even from the regen ag space.
Right, because we don't put forward any one way of doing agriculture.
So who are those farmers that are attracted to this, that are saying, right, climate change is an issue, such that I'm prepared to join an organisation like this and go and talk about it on the media. But they're not necessarily farmers that maybe small organic farmers like me would have identified with in the past. So it's interesting that there's sort of this crossing over. And so within, like, are you seeing that they actually are regenerative farmers? Like, are they large regenerative farmers? Are they changing their practices? Are they influencing other farmers to change their practices by getting involved?
There's a massive range. When you look at the events that we hold, the people in the room, you know, you've got your organic farmers, your regen farmers, you've got a lot of farmers that are employing regenerative agricultural practices, but they would never call themselves regen farmers. And then you've got the people that are coming in that are recognising that something needs to change, but they're right at the start of that journey. So it is a full spectrum, and there are lots of them that are doing, there's a lot of different work underway. But some are just kind of dipping their toe in the water, I guess.
And so they're noticing climate change effects, and so finding an organisation like yours, and that's the beginning of it.
And it's really wonderful seeing particularly some of our graziers in Queensland who, you know, they're remotely located, and so they think they're alone in noticing something's changing, and they've not been able to have those conversations. So being able to talk to others who think like they do and then learn more is, it's really lovely. We have a Thursday night kind of farmer Zoom drop-in, so kind of any farmer that's involved with us can kind of drop in and have a chat, and that's been...
What's drop-in where?
It's on Zoom, so it's like Skype. I'm happy to kind of share that link with you if you're interested. We've got a FCA chat group, because our public page is sometimes a contested space. We've created a kind of a group for farmers just to talk and not be judged and be supported, and that's where we promote the Zoom catch-ups there.
I'm just interested from your perspective, who you think is what's blocking the government from moving forward? What are the interest groups? Industry. That's what I'm wondering. Is it mining, or is it...
The mining is massive.
Is it ownership?
We've got... I would say we've got a number of blocking politicians. There's a number of politicians we would... it's interesting. I think mining is one of the biggest blockers, I think. And then we've got... when we think about the blockers that we have, we try to work with any politician, but there are some that we're never going to be able to bring across. And they have, at some point, this debate has become so politicised in a way that's unhelpful, that they can't change their story, and they think that acting on climate is a waste of money, and they can't quite shift on that. And some Yeah, they're saving face, and they've got a lot of people in their electorate who agree with them. And I think they're also beholden to what the voters are telling them. So we saw that Joel Fitzgibbon, as Shadow Ag Minister, said some fantastic things about what he was going to do, you know, the concern about climate, what he was going to do for ag, and then he kind of paid for it in the polls to an extent, and now his language has changed dramatically. So it's some of the problem is these 3-year cycles where people are so worried that they'll lose their seats, that they can't make these long-term brave decisions, which are actually
the voting population to who are driving it.
I think, you know, there's not the education about what's happening.